I want you to think of anthropology as a large tree. We have a trunk, we have a number of branches, and smaller branches extending from those larger main branches. Anthropology, we define it as the study of humankind, and we define it into four main fields. For example, extending from this trunk, we have a branch or a field of anthropology that we call physical anthropology, and it's aligned very strongly with the natural sciences. And here, for example, if we extend and we move over to a subfield, we have something that we call molecular anthropology. This is the area of anthropology that's interested in, for example, studying human genetics. There we go, we have some genes there. We're going to talk a little bit more about molecular anthropology in this course. In addition to the subfield of molecular anthropology, we also have another subfield branching off from physical anthropology that we call paleoanthropology. Paleoanthropologists are interested in fossils. They're interested in understanding human evolution. Physical anthropology, by and large, is interested in understanding whether or not we're doing molecular anthropology, if we're doing paleoanthropology. We're trying to understand evolution, human variation, and the connections that exist between all humans. If we extend this a little bit further and we go up, we have another field of anthropology that we call archaeological anthropology. Now, archaeology, it begins with the first recovered artifacts of humans. Here we're looking at, for example, Paleolithic tools, and that takes us back to about 2.5 million years ago. And oftentimes, if we're doing paleoanthropology, we're also, in addition to those fossils, we're discovering stone tools. So quite often we have paleoanthropology and archaeology going along side by side. Archaeology as a field of anthropology can be divided into subfields. So if we were looking at early stone tools, for example, we have a subfield here that we call prehistoric archaeology. And archaeology also takes us into more modern times. And here you might think of Indiana Jones engaging in what we refer to as another subfield, historical archaeology. And historic archaeology would be interested in recovering artifacts, material remains, the beginning of the historical period, which refers to that period when humans began to first write. Moving on to another field of anthropology, and let's trace that all the way up, we have something that we call linguistic anthropology. Linguistic anthropology as a field, it's interested in understanding language, variation of language, the origins of language. It will go back quite far in human history, inquiring into when humans began to speak, when we began to communicate in symbolic ways, and how our language changes over time, and also the connections that exist between our different languages. So we have a field that's referred to as historical linguistics, a subfield over here. And we can add in another one, another subfield called descriptive linguistics. Continuing along on this tree, we have three fields, and we said we want to have four fields here. So we have cultural anthropology. Stemming off, cultural anthropology is interested in understanding human behavior. It's interested in understanding our beliefs, our worldviews, our myths, our folklores, the way that other people do things. So we can break this off into a few subfields. Critical medical anthropology, for example, would be interested in the way that healthcare is distributed unequally, and perhaps the way that capitalism influences people's access to healthcare. So that would be a subfield of cultural anthropology. Extending a little bit further, we have something that we might refer to as another subfield called political anthropology, and this list just goes on and on. So here's a few of the well, the four main fields and a few of the subfields. In cultural anthropology, you could do the anthropology of religion. You could be interested in economic anthropology. As pointed out, the list goes on and on. And in doing so, we try to adopt what's referred to as a holistic approach. And when we talk about something being holistic, we understand that humans are quite complex. We are physical beings, we're genetic, we have a prehistoric history, we have a historical history, we speak, we use language, we communicate through symbols, we have a rich system of belief. Depending upon where we are, we're going to see variations, but we're also going to see a lot of similarities. So anthropology tries to use what we refer to as, and I'll go down to the bottom here and write this in, we try to use a holistic approach, or what we would refer to as a very broad approach to understanding humans, and quite often we try to use all of these fields and subfields in an attempt to gain a better understanding of humankind. Anthropology, like the other social sciences, sociology, psychology, the humanities, history, as well as the sciences and mathematics, all trace their history to the development of philosophy in ancient Greece. Philosophy emerges in ancient Greece. It's traced to a particular set of philosophers, the Milesian philosophers, Thales, Anaximander, Parmenides, and Heraclitus. These pre-Socratic philosophers are important because they began to try to understand the world around them through natural phenomena rather than supernatural forces. So Thales, for example, argued that the fundamental stuff of the universe was water, whereas Anaximander claimed it was air, Parmenides said it was earth, and Heraclitus claimed that the fundamental stuff of the universe, the fundamental element, was fire. Later on, another philosopher by the name of Democritus argued that the fundamental stuff was neither earth, fire, air, or water, but something that was indivisible, and in doing so, he defined the atom. He said it was the fundamental stuff of the universe that everything was built upon. Only later on did we realize that Democritus was wrong and atoms could in fact be divided and split. Either way, philosophy, it comes from the Greek terms philosophia, which means the love or pursuit of knowledge. So mathematics, it fits into philosophy, as does science, anthropology, sociology. Philosophy gives birth to all of these disciplines. In fact, the very first individual to call himself a philosopher was Pythagoras, well known for his the Pythagorean theorem and the development of mathematics. From there, all of these questions, they eventually lead to new answers. And as we started to get answers to questions, the disciplines that we're familiar with today, they begin to emerge. Psychology, it emerges much later than philosophy. And if we're interested in tracing its origins, we could go back to the witch hunts in medieval Europe, to an individual by the name of Vere, for example. And he often is regarded as the father of clinical psychology. While his work wasn't entirely academic, what he was interested in was witches and the idea that perhaps they were not possessed by the devil or associates of the devil, and instead that they had mental illness. This was entirely new at that point of time. He argued that in the same way that the body gets sick, perhaps so too does the mind. So psychology, it traces its origins to the word psyche and logos, the study of the mind, soul, spirit, or life force. Sociology traces its roots to the French Revolution, by and large. Society had changed so much that an early thinker by the name of Auguste Comte, he began to inquire how could society be put back on track, and what happened to lead to this French Revolution. So the sociology, it comes from the Greek word, the study of socius, or society or being social. Anthropology emerges slightly after sociology does. And in fact, in its early years, it was defined as that branch of sociology that studies primitive people. By no means do we use that word primitive anymore. The problem with the term primitive is it means less evolved, and while that might have been representative of early thinking, anthropologists don't believe that any human is less evolved. We're evolved for our own particular environments. So eventually anthropology emerges. Logos, the study of, anthropos, humankind. Now anthropology, it's a little bit different than a lot of the other disciplines and similar in a lot of ways. We're interested in psychological questions, of course, because humans are psychological creatures. Similarly, we're social, so we have to expect that anthropology will delve into some of the questions that sociologists ask. We're also biological, and this has led anthropology to the study of human genetics, evolutionary biology, and searching for the origins of humankind from non-creationist models. What's anthropology? Like I said, it's the study of humankind. And if we think of the study of humankind, we have to understand that that's a really broad concept. Like, to be human, what does that mean? There's philosophical questions, there's religion involved. We have our customs, our traditions. We organize ourselves in particular ways. We have different forms of marriage around the world. So like I said, this is a really broad area, and sometimes when I think about anthropology, I think of a finely woven carpet, for example, a rug, or maybe even a tree. I've referred to that already. Anthropology, we have a main trunk, and from that trunk we have a number of branches that extend, and those branches, they continue to go off into further specializations.